So stories of sketchiness. I feel like when you're living in a van and you're maybe sleeping in parking lots or weird roads you're not aware of, I feel like you encounter some interesting things. So have you had some scares?
The first thing I'll say about that is that's exactly how I viewed van life from the outside. And then once you live it and you close your curtains, you could be in a Walmart parking lot or on the streets of Brooklyn last night. It's the most comfortable, adorable little home, and I never feel sketched.
You know, we drove down to Mexico recently, and it was like we would be in this little sketchy town in Mexico that we've never heard of. We just had to drive there because it was off the highway, and like we didn't do a research. It's like maybe that was dumb, but you know, once you, like Bec said, once you close the door, it's like you could be anywhere. You're just in your little house. So we've been super fortunate. There hasn't been like a crazy story that I could tell you right now.
Well, sure, we broke down pretty hardcore. We could tell that story.
Okay. I mean, that wasn't sketch though. Still, like
It's
there was
true.
no sketchiness about it.
It wasn't sketchy, but I think you asked us earlier about, you know, you live in the van, so then there's a breakdown, and it's a lot more traumatic than just your car breaking down
It's your
because
home.
it's your home. So when we were in Mexico, I was just driving along on the highway. I think you were editing a vlog, and I tapped you, and I'm like, okay, the car just made a weird thing. I'm going to pull over. Didn't seem dramatic at all. It just kind of tugged a little weird. And we pulled over. We ended up sleeping there because we couldn't get the car started. Got towed. And it turns out we needed an entirely new engine. Like the
camshaft wouldn't spin. It was a total disaster.
So we were in central Mexico.
They don't even use these engines in Mexico. So they couldn't get parts. If you wanted parts, you'd have to wait months at a time. They couldn't even bring you a new engine in. So we ended up actually towing the van to the border. Texas border.
Eamon sat with like this Spanish speaking, did not know what was happening. Eamon's vlogging it. The guy's like,
you know, when we were talking
camera?
about your roles of the relationship, like this was when I stepped in and Bec was...
This is your role.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then no one would bring the van through the border, not a Mexican or an American. So we had to find a buddy of an uncle whose friend had a tow truck company on the border town who had a Subaru because the commercial bridge was closed at 3 a.m. when we were waiting, to bring chains and literally tow our little Sprinter van across the border, then put it on a flatbed, drive it to Austin, get a new motor, go back into the city, go back into Mexico. It was crazy.
And everyone thought we were crazy.
So you went back to Mexico.
Yeah.
So we had 2 months. We had booked off from our like business life, and we thought, okay, let's go to Mexico. You know, we have the travel bug, so it was just like, let's do this. And it was day 2 of our trip. We were in Mexico.
So then if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh my gosh, these guys are so dumb. Getting back into Mexico, our oil starts dripping. And we're like, get out. Guess what town we're in? We're the same town that we broke down in.
The locals are probably like,
Mario,
these white
the dude,
people again?
Yeah.
Seriously, they're like, gringo?
Yeah.
Gringo.
The dude at the Mercedes dealership just shook his
When
head.
we rolled back in, he's like, no. Or I towed back in or whatever. He's like, you guys aren't seriously here again. And I was like, never in our travels have I ever thought, like, we've had some weird stuff happen to us, and I'm always like, oh, this happened for a reason, you know, like, this is okay. But that was kind of like, what the?
It's like, why me?
Yeah. No, not even like pity for myself, but just like, are we stupid for coming back into
Right.
Yeah, like, how dumb are we? Anyway, it wasn't a disaster. Mario is a complete legend. Fixed it up.
Shout out
you
to
know,
Mario.
Yeah.
Mario, we love you. And actually, one of our like YouTube followers found us. He lived in the town. And we ended up becoming like a part of his crew in Querétaro.
Sergio,
like,
huge shout out to you, man.
Yeah,
You're a legend as well.
Yeah, so it always turns in, if you just are positive about even the negative stuff of travel, it can be amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, the locals in Mexico were amazing. So, but it just sounds sketchy. Like, you broke down, you're in central Mexico.
Yeah.
You know, like, what do you do? But
so, I mean, going back to that kind of question of sketchiness, like, our situation has been really, really cool. Now, I wouldn't like go and broadcast that publicly saying like, oh, it's totally safe living in a van. Like, obviously you're exposing yourself to the elements. Like, you're sleeping on the streets in Brooklyn. We're, I think, very aware people. So we're not going to have the door open with the lights on and like listening to music and hanging out. That's just asking for attention. So a lot of the times, like, we'll be aware, we'll roll into a quiet street, close the curtain, pass out, get up early.
Yeah.
You know?